All right, what is up, everybody? I had a comment on one of my previous videos, and it really got me thinking. So this is with regards to damage attenuation. And I've started to see some of the other, bigger creators in the Warframe space. Like I saw Tactical Potato, which he's a great content creator for Warframe, saying, hey, like some of the stuff in IO Weaver maybe isn't working super well. And I think the fact that there are multiple damage attenuation bosses, especially on Steel Path, it gets to be a bit of a slog. I mean, we damage attenuation has been around for a while. And there was an excellent observation on one of my previous videos, um, which was basically, to sum it up, is why didn't DE just use damage adaptation, which is what sentient enemies have, instead of damage attenuation? Now, the way that damage attenuation works is there's this formula, it's documented on the wiki, which basically the more DPS you do, especially it's weighted more by burst damage, the more DPS you do to an enemy with damage attenuation, which is like an Archon or a lot of boss enemies or VIP enemies, they take less damage the more damage you do to them. And it does cap at a certain point. I think I've noticed on Steel Path at least, it seems like you can do about like 10,000 damage per hit. Now people counter that with things like the Prisma Angstrom, which I guess my Warframe sound is off, so let me fix that quick. Where you do a lot of small hits. The rockets that come out, or there's been weapons in the past like the Boltor and Karnan. That had at one point it was extremely good against damage attenuation, but that was like kind of a bug. So there are ways to get around it, but it's often based on very specific weapons. And it kind of feels a little cheesy. It's like, for me personally, I basically just always bring the Fenmore, like a super high fire rate Fenmore, to like Archon hunts and stuff, and it kind of melts the boss. But it's something that is kind of endemic to Warframe, where it's a system that's not explained visually very well to the player, and the solution is not very obvious from a gameplay perspective. So, I'm going to go over here and I have some sentience up. Now, if I shoot a sentient, right? So you can see there's this shield icon on the upper right, or to the right of their health bar, right? So that's their damage adaptation. So if let me try and fill that out. Okay, I guess it doesn't want to. This is kind of crazy. All right, so when it gets to a health gate, which is 25% health, it's going to get resistance to the damage it's taking. So in this case, my Coda Bass Assist is modded for Blast. So now it's resistant to blast damage. So if I hit it again, it's going to be taking way less damage, right? Now, there's a couple reasons why I think sentient adaptation could be a much better solution than damage attenuation. So one of those is visual cues. Now, it's very obvious. Well, now you need to know what the status effect icons are, but like if you used your mods to make blast damage, you probably know what the blast damage icon looks like. So it's a blast icon on a shield, and it's taking way less damage. It's pretty apparent, or it's more apparent than damage attenuation at least, that there is some mechanic causing this enemy to take less damage from that particular damage source. Now, what are the ways to counter that? Now, you could switch to, a different weapon. So my Prisma Angstrom is modded for heat, so it took way more damage because it only had damage adaptation against blast. Alternatively, if I might actually die because these things are gonna hit me by accident. All right, let me get it to 25%. So it gets okay, so now it has blast resistance, so you can take it off with void damage. So This brings me to the second reason why I think this could be a much better solution is player feedback. So, and player agency, I guess would be a better way to phrase it. So with damage attenuation, the only way to interact with damage attenuation is by using very specific weapons you need to know about, really like from outside sources outside of the game. And it's kind of feels cheesy. Whereas with sentient adaptation, you can interact with it dynamically as you're fighting the enemy. So you can either switch to a different weapon, or you can use your drifter or operator, or you know any form of void damage will remove their adaptation. So, and the one of the things that DE has really wanted to avoid is enemies getting one shot. Which ironically, that's one of the ways that people were getting around damage attenuation on Archon bosses when they first got released. I mean, I myself, I was using a Kuva Heck and using the alt fire to do so much damage. You could basically one shot it with a big enough damage buff, like from Roar, where you avoided the damage attenuation entirely. So I personally, I think this is a way more elegant solution to what DE is trying to do. Now there are some knobs that they can tune with this. You know, maybe if it's like a boss, they make this be every 10% health, or you know, for an Archon fight, because it's split into 2 health bars, have it be 25% of each of its health bars or something like that. I think that, and yes, like a super geared out player is going to take out those smaller health bar segments really quickly. However, then they need to do something, whether it's switch their weapon, go into operator to remove that damage adaptation, one of those two, or use Zaku's buff as a helmet option. You know, you need to do something and interact with that system. And in my opinion, that would feel a lot better than damage attenuation right now, where here, like, there's that UI element to the right of their health bar showing you that something is going on. For damage attenuation, there's literally no indication whatsoever why you're doing so much less damage. There is nothing. Nothing in game is showing you why all of a sudden against this particular enemy, like an Archon, you're just not doing any damage. I don't think that that's very good design. I think it's kind of like a brute force solution to DE wanting us to not be able to one-shot bosses. And here's the thing, like, yes, there's going to be some weapons that kind of shred through this, like the Prisma Angstrom is kind of insane, right? So I can kind of just blow through that. But guess what? People use the Angstrom and Karnan to get through damage attenuation anyways. So it's like, it's already being used for that purpose. So a lot of the weapons that would be able to abuse this system are already being used to abuse damage attenuation anyways. And then this system is way more visible to a player, and it enables more player agency to interact with that system rather than it just being some under the hood calculation that mysteriously reduces their damage and they don't know why. So I thought that was a really cool suggestion. You know, I forget the person's name who made that comment. My apologies, but I really hope DE takes a look at this, because once again, this has become very prevalent in their end game content. You know, which I mentioned in my Isleweaver video. Almost all of the end game things have damage attenuation in some way, shape, or form. Whether that's the fragmented boss fight, whether that's the tank fight from 1999, whether that's the Araxia boss, Archon hunts, like almost every single patch has had some instance of damage attenuation added to the game. Players are continually frustrated by that. And I think that this could be a much better solution. And you could also kind of incorporate it into the lore, right? Like, Archons are already related to sentience. Maybe you could say, like, you know, Wally brought some sentient void tech to 1999 and slapped it into the tank. I mean, we already have something like this with the amalgams on the Jupiter tile set because Salad V, you know, incorporated sentient technology into corpus technology. So like I love it when games are able to take a mechanic, have it be visible to the player, give players agency with how they interact with that mechanic, and then furthermore be able to have some lore justification for why that mechanic exists, which all of that is infinitely better, compared to how damage attenuation is done right now, which is totally under the hood. It's just like a completely construed way of limiting player damage. So I thought that was a cool idea. Odds are this is never going to happen. I hope I maybe it does. You never know. Bare minimum, I just wanted to talk about it. I thought it was really cool. So thanks for bringing up that comment. And let me know what you think. Do you think something like sentient adaptation would be a better replacement for damage attenuation? Now, one thing I want to clarify, because in my last few videos, there's been lots of skill issue comments. Like, I'm LR5. I have like 6,000 hours in the game. I have all of these weapons you can use to cheese these systems. I can get around this stuff. Someone who's like MR18, who's just starting to do Archon hunts and doesn't know this information, is going to have a really bad time when they take their shiny weapon they really love into an Archon hunt and it literally does 0 damage. So this is not really something that I care about because I know how to get around these systems. This is more trying to improve the experience for all Warframe players, which the average mastery rank is like 12 or something. So the vast majority of the millions of people that play Warframe are not high MR or legendary rank. So we do also have to think about what the game is like for them. Frankly, that's the most important thing, is making sure the game is fun for them. So, I just kind of wanted to address those comments. But anyways, thought it was a cool idea. Wanted to talk about it. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.